This is now our final session, and we're going to have a networking reception right outside those doors after this. This discussion here is on the future of U.S. India venture collaboration. We're going to discuss the most exciting frontiers in global innovation, the growing venture capital collaboration between the two nations. Here are two leaders from both sides of the table. Manthan Shah, principal at WestBridge Capital, and Venktesh Shukla, founder and managing partner at Monta Vista Capital and former chair of Thai Global. Please welcome them both.
Thanks. Great. Thanks, everyone. And it's always hard to be the last panel, so we'll try to keep it entertaining. And yeah, we want to leave lots of time for questions. It's always more interactive versus, obviously, I know Venk very well, and I can keep asking him questions to teach me how to do investing. But jokes apart, just very quickly, like I said, my name is Manthan. I'm part of WestBridge Capital. For those who don't know us, we are a U.S. India firm. We invest in growth stage companies. We manage around $7.5 billion in capital, and it's an evergreen fund, so allows us to be super long-term oriented. I let Venk, who has obviously a great experience being in the U.S. India Corridor, share a bit about himself as well. Venk, please, about your journey.
Sure. I've been involved, you see, for a long time with promoting entrepreneurship, not just in Silicon Valley, but also in India. And we had an interesting conversation when we invited Prime Minister Modi to Silicon Valley. And there was one session in which, before we came down for a public meeting, there was a session with the CEOs of all the big public companies, Cisco, Qualcomm, Google, Microsoft, and Adobe. And some CEO asked Prime Minister a question about some policy. And the Prime Minister said, and all the television cameras watching and everything, they asked a question about some policy. And Prime Minister said that whether you are a domestic company or a foreign company, whether you are a small company or a big company, whether you are in this industry or that industry, our policy remains the same. So I actually interrupted, and I was not sure how he would react. I interrupted and I said, sir, if you treat a 3-month-old baby the same as a 30-year-old man, guess who is going to suffer? So to his credit, he didn't take offense that I interrupted him. He turned to Amitabh Kant, who was traveling with him, and he said, "Aap inke saath kal samay bitayenge." And then you see, after that, 3-4 months of back and forth, and Prime Minister launched with great fanfare, Startup India on January 2016. And that policy framework has changed the dynamic of startups in India. If nothing else, it educated the country that the startups need to see a different different kind of treatment. They're not just a small version of a big company, but they need to see a completely different policy regime. And some of it has been implemented. A lot still needs to be done. But I think it's a tribute, you see, to a dynamism of the entrepreneurs in India, that now there are more than 120 unicorns based in India, and now it is recognized as the 3rd largest ecosystem in India. So I'm happy. In terms of for the longest time, Government of India had this council on startups, and I was privileged that I was the only non-Indian citizen in that panel. Again, a lot of discussions. Some of it got implemented. Most of it was conversation. But at least every incremental improvement, adds significantly to the dynamism of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So the other thing that I do is a VC fund. It's a seed stage VC fund. And we focus only on investing in US companies. We don't invest in companies that are based in India.
Thank you, Venk. And I think one of the things we were talking about, and it's hard to keep AI out of the conversation given it's the only thing, at least in Silicon Valley, people want to talk about. If we talk about the US India Corridor, one of the things which has helped a lot of companies, IT services to SaaS to the next generation help is sort of India has always been seen as a low cost center for developers, and which obviously in the world of B2B, SaaS, etc., you need a lot of product to be developed, and hence it makes it interesting. In the world of AI, I'm just curious, how will the dynamics change? Do you see still a very important role for India to play in the U.S. India corridor, or will we see more just U.S. centric companies? I'm curious if you have thoughts on, in the world of AI, how will the dynamics in the U.S. India corridor change?
I'm not sure it changes fundamentally. Indian companies that are targeting a particular vertical application have an opportunity, but Indian companies is taking on large language models or taking on any of the foundational stuff that seems like a far cry. India just does not have the either the intellectual resources or is it the financial resources to incubate and build a foundational AI technology. But most of the money is to be made in the application space, in the vertical application space. So there is plenty of opportunity for Indian companies to innovate there and be successful.
Yeah, makes sense. One of the things we get excited about is in this world of AI, I think services will take a very interesting turn. And services will always need humans. So whether it is in healthcare, whether it is in any verticalized tech and so on and so forth, because there's so much outsourcing happening, I think having humans in the loop is always going to be an important aspect, given AI might not always deliver the end result. So I think India, while not be just development, but from any other sort of human resources needed, will still have a role to play. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But obviously your journey through early days of TIE and sort of seeing how things have evolved, what do you see has changed in terms of the quality of entrepreneurs, the quality of the companies being built in this US India corridor? What do you feel has changed? What has remained the same? Where is an opportunity to do something as sort of folks who are involved in the ecosystem, venture capitalists, founders, policymakers, to make sure that we keep thriving and going in the right direction here?
The most interesting shift that I've seen is that for the longest time, the entrepreneurs, most of the startups were started by people who were in their 20s, and people in their 30s or 40s or 50s did not. And I was always wondered that if you are in your 20s, it's very hard to do. It's very hard to be successful in B2B, because B2B requires you to pay your dues to understand how that particular industry operates, in order to understand, where the shortcomings are, and then come up, with improvement. So for the longest time, somehow it was, all the entrepreneurs, were in their 20s, straight out of college. And maybe it had something to do with culturally that, once you get married and have kids and stuff, then you're not supposed to take any risk, and you're supposed to take care of this. I don't know, I'm just speculating. But lately that has changed. Now I'm seeing that that people who have spent, 10, 15 years in space research organization, they are jumping into entrepreneurship. And and across the industries that I'm seeing that that people are taking risk. Maybe it's because people have concluded that there's really not much of a downside risk to being an entrepreneur. You still get your salary, and if it doesn't work, you can either go to some other startup or you can go to some big company. So this is a very, very welcome shift. Without this, you really cannot be a serious player in B2B space.
Makes sense. I think one of the things I would also add is now there are enough success stories of companies and talent across both sides of the pond where it's like the playbooks are written. So the quality of entrepreneurs that at least we are seeing as well is just tremendous. And I think it continues to just get better and better.
I mean, you guys have been doing this thing, cross-border, this corridor thing for the longest time. What changes have you guys seen?
Yeah, I think the WestBridge as a firm, I think we've been here 25 plus years. So I think it's been a very interesting journey. I think 2 or 3 things have happened. It used to be where initially people used to look for, let me make this software for cheap and sell it to SMBs. So that's a market Indians used to tap very, very aggressively. I think now from day one, they're happy to go to the biggest of the big enterprises and build the best in class product and not just copy something. So I think that talks to the point I was making around the quality of entrepreneurs, where they are not scared to go to a JP Morgan or one of the biggest enterprises here in the US and sell the software which actually no one has even tried before, or now AI, obviously. So I think that's one big shift we have seen, and that is a true testament to the quality of the entrepreneurs, as well as the fact that there are enough playbooks now that the Indian entrepreneurs understand how to build those companies. So I think that's one a big change. But on that, actually, I think we were talking about this as well, Venk. India is becoming an interesting market. The rest of the world is obviously still a big market. There are enough unicorns in India doing B2C in India, right? But we still see, like, when you have to build a B2B company, it's almost inevitable to think about United States, right?
Yeah.
So maybe talk a bit about like why so, and like what
no,
can change.
No, that's very interesting. This thing, I think like the old saying that why asking somebody why do you rob a bank is because that's where the money is, right? So. U.S. continues to be 40 to 50% of a B2B market. So, and India is less than 10%. So if you hope to be a big company, if you hope to be a globally successful company, you have to get out of India. You have to, and if you get out of India, where do you go? US is unparalleled in 3 or 4 attributes. One is that this is the place where people are willing to bet on a risky, underfunded startup. There is no other place in the world where big companies would bet on a untested startup. Certainly not in Japan, not in Korea, most part of Europe not. They first want to see, are you successful in US? So you have to come to US to establish yourself. The other thing is that US, this is the only place, especially Silicon Valley is the only place that has enough expertise on scaling globally. There have been hundreds of companies out of Silicon Valley that have been global success. So if you want to come to one place where you can recruit the people across functions who know how to scale globally, you have no choice but to come to Silicon Valley. The other reason to come here, to come to US, is that for the same functionality, if you're getting paid $1 in India, in US people will pay you $5. Exact same functionality. People will pay you more. And in India, another problem is that if you have customers in India, they will force you to become a banyan tree, which means force you to solve some adjacent problems, which have nothing to do with your prospect of global success. In globally, companies or startups are successful if they're like a redwood tree, tall and narrow, solving one problem and one problem extremely well. In India, the tendency is for the customers to ask you to, hey, can you do this also? Can you do this also? And so you become like a banyan tree, which actually makes you less likely to succeed in the global market. So lately what I've been seeing, in fact, one VC from India told me that they tell their portfolio companies, not to have any customer in India to begin with, which was fascinating.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. I'll probably end with one last question. It's impossible to talk about this issue, but given how things are changing from an immigration standpoint, if the Indian founders, who obviously now, to your point, US is the market, and come here and think of building companies, what do you think will change if, let's say, it becomes harder, not just from if they're coming here for education, but I know a lot of entrepreneurs come here for O1 and just start the companies over here. So what do you think will happen as sort of the stance in that corridor keeps changing?
I'm not an expert to see on politics. This is really in the realm of politics, but it will be really unfortunate for US if the most enterprising, most innovative, most risk-taking entrepreneurs in the world are denied entry to this country. And I was just showing him. I hope nobody's reporting me to the authorities here, but Steve Bannon is on record saying that he prefers illegal immigrants from Mexico to legal immigrants from India. He's on record saying that. And today somebody tweeted that with a visual you see of burning cars and stuff in LA, and saying this is what you get with that mentality. So anyway, so it's really a political kind of thing, and hopefully, I hope that in the end, you see, the government makes the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, it will be good for entrepreneurship for sure, and for everyone involved. But yeah, we are happy to talk about anything which is helpful for the audience. Obviously, we have different kinds of people in the audience. So if there are any questions for Venk, myself, happy to answer those. Please, sir.
Thank you. Matthew Reese with Geonomica. Could you, I think what you just said about the tree imagery and the pressure that companies in India face to, it sounds like, expand their mission and diversify in ways that are not beneficial. Could you, that's actually a very interesting idea. Could you just elaborate on it, and what's an example of, are the pressures to diversify into other sectors, or is it to expand their CSR or nonprofit offerings that somehow are a diversion from their core competency?
Well, it's not expansion into CSR or expansion away from core competence. It's just that, you see, if you are solving, you see, one particular problem, let's say in HR, people will say, hey, if you're doing this problem in HR, can you also do this? Because I rely on this other tool for this, and I don't want to be paying for that, so can you add that functionality too? And this is that kind of a pressure that Indian startups selling to Indian customers face.
Yeah, I would just add one quick thing on that. So what happens is Indian enterprises have been traditionally doing things via people. Like the technology penetration is relatively much lower because labor is cheap, find people to do it. So when they come across a technology vendor, in their mind it's like, oh, technology, so everything goes to this particular org, right? So even if one's expertise lies in something on the infrastructure side, oh, cybersecurity sounds like infrastructure, why don't you do that as well? So kind of pulls them in different directions, and you don't build that vertical expertise.
That's a better explanation, yeah.
I'd like to go a little further on the point you said that we in India are unable to do foundation type models. I've been following the research on foundation models, and about a year ago, I was talking to some people in India, and of course, you've probably heard of Nandan's view, which is different. But I don't see why, if China could do what they did with DeepSeek, why we couldn't do it in India. We have, I think, the intellectual resources. We may not have the culture to risk or to go into that much depth. And the reason I say that is I was with NASSCOM when we started the 10,000 startups program before the government then did that. And I went to and did focus groups in Bangalore and elsewhere. And there was always this Me Too type of innovation that was the focus. And you know, you talk to people as to why they weren't going a little further and being more ambitious, in terms of substance. So could you explain a little bit more why you think we couldn't have done that, do a DeepSeek in India?
I mean, it looks like you answered the question yourself, right? That for the longest time, the VCs had the challenge in India that entrepreneurs were not thinking big enough, that they were not coming up with really big, bold ideas, and they will be, saying, hey, we'll do this of India. We'll, Airbnb of India or this thing of India, right? So that was the challenge, you see, for the longest time. It's changing now. I think with success of companies like, say, his portfolio companies, Innovacor, Dhruva, those kind of companies, now I think it's changing, but it takes a long time. It takes a long time for that risk culture, you see, to take root. Indians are not short of ambitions. They are not short of talent also. But I think the rest of the ecosystem probably has not caught up to that to support that level of ambition.
Can I just add one?
Yeah, please.
I think we miss out on the big bang because there are lots of externalities and spillovers. The DeepSeek, just to give the example in China, the success of DeepSeek has had a lot of positive spillover for other Chinese companies. So the absence of a big bang of the type that, I think is what ends up happening is most of the guys, people, their ambition is to sell out fairly early on, to get acquired. And so we miss the big bang.
Yeah, I think one thing which might happen, I think what's happening in this AI race, interestingly for India as well, it's happening in parallel versus cloud and some of the other technology shifts happened where India was a little behind. Technology shift today is where India doesn't have a major disadvantage, and I'm loosely speaking that on that. I think what might happen is, I think there's a fair understanding amongst a lot of people that the foundational model layer might be commoditized over time. So I think that debate is also, I think beyond a point, as not as important as the fact that will India have lots of winners in the world of AI? And we fundamentally think, at least like our firm invests across, that there are going to be lots of winners. It will be in the orchestration layer, application layer, who knows? But I think now we have the quality, the talent, the ambition, sort of hopefully, and the venture dollars to support those kind of companies.
So question here. So just to link up with the first panel, Rafiq and Sumit, are you seeing any collaboration India-US in terms of defense?
I don't have a good point of view on that, Venk. I don't know. I don't know this is the answer. I mean, I personally don't know.
There is still a little bit of sensitivity in the defense community here vis-a-vis India. And so I don't know if there is an active collaboration or not. Even here, I think you have to be not only, in order to work on those projects, you have to not only be a US citizen, but you have to be cleared to work on those kind of projects. So I think this is, I'm not aware of any such joint collaboration. But I think it's an area I see ripe for a much deeper collaboration, because the biggest problem in US is that they don't have enough trained personnel to work on these things. I mean, to give you an example, all the US systems built, and there are thousands and thousands of those Linux-based systems that were installed 20, 30 years ago, and they are known cyber vulnerabilities with those, and those exist on submarines, on ships, on aircrafts, and all those kind of things. It's only if China or Iran or North Korea, anytime they would want it, they could attack those things, and it's known vulnerability. And US knows that, but it cannot find people who will work on 30-year-old systems. Because first they have to know programming enough, and second they have to be willing to work on those 30-year-old systems, and nobody wants to. So the only way it will work is if they have a Y2K kind of program where Indian programmers work on that. So until that mind shift takes place, these kind of things won't be possible. But if it were to take place, it would be tremendous win-win for both countries.
We can take probably one last question. Oh, thank you.
What about food security? Like, it seems like climate change, I'm thinking about California, agricultural research, India, California, there's a lot in common there. Do you know of any collaboration in that sector?
I'm thinking, I don't know, Venk, if you have any thoughts.
Food sector.
There are a bunch of interesting companies that we come across who sort of take a more research-oriented approach, especially, I think, climate intersection food is an area where at least we have personally seen 2 or 3 companies. I think the lines are also blurring if someone is building for US or for India, given technology is so fundamental now and it's happening here and now. So there are more private incorporated companies coming up, which folks like us like to invest in. But I don't know if governments are collaborating or not. So I don't know if Venk, you have a point of view.
I have no idea. I really have no idea.
Cool. I'm sure we are going to have lots of conversations. But thank you, Venk, for taking the time. Venk is obviously someone who's been around the corner, and we should ask all the questions we can once we have a chance.
It means to say that I'm old.
Thank you.